Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about astrology and the death of Tony, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name exactly. It's Hsieh or something similar to that. His last name is spelled Hsieh, and anyway, according to Wikipedia, he was an entrepreneur with the internet and venture capitalist, and he was somebody also that he had some kind of it was a shoe and clothing corporation. He was the CEO of it, and I'm going to talk about and also it states that he had some internet. It was an internet advertising network which he had co-founded. It was called Link Exchange, and I'm going to be talking about some natal placements and transits that may have been tied into his death. Sadly, he succumbed to injuries that he endured it was a house fire. He apparently was visiting some family members, and he had got caught in the fire and the flames, and he died in a hospital. I don't know if it was in a hospital or in his home, but he had suffered burns he had burns as a result of it, and he died because of the fire that he was involved in. So I want to talk about some transits and natal placements in his chart that may have been tied into his prosperity, success, his life a little bit, and also about his passing, sadly. Now, the thing about it is I'm going to go to his chart now. I'm looking at obviously, I mean, being the visionary that he was, it's no surprising he's a Sagittarius sun. His Mercury is in Sagittarius, so right there, that could be somewhat prophetic and visionary. His Mercury also conjuncts Neptune as well, so that could have some prophetic ability in seeing the road that lies ahead. It tells me that his thinking probably was very idealistic as well, and really a lot of inspiration in his thought. But having Mercury and Sagittarius in the mix, of course, he had his mind very expansive and very optimistic. He was again a Sun in Sagittarius, based on the solar sunrise chart I did. His moon is in Cancer. Now his moon could be in Leo if he was born later during the day, but I had to improvise, of course, do a solar/sunrise chart, which I put the sun at the same point as his ascendant. Transit sun in that 12th of that solar sunrise 12th house. That could be an indicator of the life ending, because the sun, of course, is associated with the life. The 12th house is a house of endings. It's a house of limitations, restrictions, and this is another thing I'm looking at too in his natal chart. He had Mars in his solar sunrise chart. Mars and Chiron in Aries in the 4th house of the end of life in the home. And Mars could be associated with fire. He was in he was in his a family member's home, and it did involve a fire. It took place near that end, and unfortunately did impact his end of life, his latter part of life, and resulted in the end of life. Chiron could be about physical wounds as well as emotional ones. Chiron falls in the 4th house in the solar sunrise chart. Chiron in Aries. It wouldn't surprise me if some of these burns were on his face and his head. It could have very well been. And Aries being on that 4th house cusp reinforces energy, where the end of life can have something of some volatile means, and so in this case it was the result of fire. I'd say Aries can be associated with that. Mars as well associated with fire. And another thing I'm looking at too in his chart, he does have in the solar sunrise chart, does have the zodiac sign Cancer on the 8th house cusp. So right there, that could be an indicator of the death that somehow involves something family related. Its ruler falls in the 7th house, but conjunct the 8th house cusp. And the thing about this is as well, I'm looking at the chart, and there's also as far as anything we're talking about as far as anything where it's related to his being successful, his prosperity. He also had in his chart Venus in Aquarius. Venus conjunct Jupiter in Aquarius in the second house of income, which of course is a very strong, and it's an indicator of prosperity. He did this through the internet. He was an entrepreneur. He made money, became affluent through the shoe and clothing company. And Venus can be associated with fashion and clothing. It conjuncts his Jupiter, which could make it even more fortuitous and lucky. And I believe this was done. If this was, I'm sure at least some of this was done on the internet. I don't remember exactly, but Aquarius is the sign of the internet and computers. So it's not really, that mind-boggling when you look at this. And his chart, he had at the time he had transit South Node in Sagittarius, making a separation from his natal sun. So that's an indicator of the life ending in a life, being in Sagittarius one that he expressed, was somewhat visionary and I'm sure very jocular, jovial, very future oriented, somebody that was the incorrigible optimist. And the sun, of course, is about our life. He has also in his chart his north node conjuncts his natal sun in Sagittarius. So his future, it's undoubtedly, it was no surprise, was tied into where he was going to shine. He was going to stand out in something he knew that's where his future had lied. And it's very sad when you hear stories like this and people dying at a relatively young age, dying at the age of 46. And the thing about this too is I've noticed in the solar sunrise chart, he has Uranus in the 10th house of the career. Uranus is associated with the internet, with computers. 10th house, the career. So it's not surprising his career did involve the internet and computers, and something that perhaps is, when we're talking about clothing, something that may have been innovative, because I'm sure it was his own designs. And the thing about this too is that he also has Pluto conjunct the midheaven in the solar sunrise chart. Pluto, so it's not surprising his death was something that was going to be something that gained a lot of notoriety and recognition and attention. So just trying to see if there's anything else in his chart that is tied in with his success during his life. The ruler of his 10th house, Venus, he's got in the solar sunrise chart, he does have Libra on the cusp of the 10th house. That ruler falls in the second house of income, and it's in the sign of Aquarius. The sign's connected with the internet and computers. So it's another indicator to me that his career was one that was going to be very auspicious as far as generating income at this time. And I'm also looking as far as any other transits in his chart that may have been indicated some kind of abrupt passing. It appears he had transit Uranus in the solar sunrise chart in the 4th house of the end of life. So that could be an indicator of some kind of the end of life coming in a very unpredictable, spontaneous, very surprising, very shocking manner, to say the least. So, and also at some other points in his chart, again, he does have, he had transit Mars hitting the 4th house as well, and he also had, and again, he did have Mars in Aries in the 4th house, so he was going through his Mars return as well. Transit Mars was also making at this time a conjunction to his natal Chiron, so that's an indicator right there of wounds and suffering through fire. And in the 4th house of home and the end of life, well, he was in his family member's home, at the time that this did transpire. And only thing, I'm just trying to see, any other transits and natal placements that may have been tied in to his passing. But there's really, it looks like that's pretty much as far as pretty much it as far as the transits that again may have been tied in to his past. As I said, I was talking about before, having the he has the zodiac sign Cancer on the eighth house cusp, which could be a death that could have been surrounded by one or more family members that were falling in. I mean, the seventh house. One could argue that that could be a death that could be something with the with the public. I don't know if he had a significant other, if he was married or not, if he was in the company of a significant other when he actually did pass away. Seventh house is open adversaries. This was not done obviously through anybody that was an open enemy. This was obviously something inadvertent that he got caught up in the flames and he had died as a result of that. So anyway, but the fact that it was peaceful, that might play a role in that ruler being in the seventh house, because the seventh house in astrology, of course, corresponds with the zodiac sign Libra. So, and also going back to the fact he has Pluto conjunct the 10th house cusp in the solar sunrise chart. That's the death that was peaceful. That it could manifest in a death that's peaceful, which is Libra. That gained a lot of notoriety, attention, and recognition because it is hitting the 10th house cusp. So really, this is again, this is just something that's you're talking about something that was very tragic, devastating, very traumatic, something you don't wish on anybody. Well, I do see. Hold on a moment, people. There was one more thing that I wanted to state, that when I'm looking at his chart and seeing certain looking at certain things and configuration that I notice that he does have, is that, I mean, when you're looking at chart, he does have he has a lot of squares in it. He's got a lot of squares. What I'm trying to say is that he appears he has if you're going with Uranus, he's got Uranus and late degree of Libra, moon based on the solar sunrise chart, late degree of Cancer, and Mars in a late degree of Aries. Venus is in early Aquarius. It forms an actual, what it does, it's forming a Grand Cross configuration. And the thing about this is, at the time he had transit Saturn opposing, making aspects to the different points of this configuration. Now it's not conjoining. If you're used, depending on the orbs using, it's not going to be conjoining his natal Venus, but it is opposing the moon in Cancer at a late degree, and it's also making aspects, appears, to Mars and Uranus. And I'm thinking this might have played a role, perhaps in this astrologically, in this passing, and may have activated some of this energy in this configuration. Now you're talking about Mars being involved with fire. The moon is the home. It's the family. It also could be the public. And you're talking about Uranus as well, and Uranus is something that has of course, very unpredictable, unexpected energy. So it's at least making the transit Saturn at this time was making a square to his natal Mars. It would be opposing his natal moon if that was based on the solar sunrise time, moon in Cancer, and making at least a loose square to his natal Uranus. When you have energy like this, it can often denote significant events in the course of one's life. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.